Chloe Garrison, and I'm here with Kerri Lake and excited to explore the topic of retrofitting your foundation. So I am curious about this one because I think when people hear it, there's lots of different directions that they could take that topic. Obviously, the word foundation sort of grounds us in that, but yeah, I think calibration. How do we recalibrate? Almost unbeknownst to us needing to. So
that's the fascinating thing, isn't it? It's like retrofitting your foundation, and that recalibration isn't about trying to find where I'm broken and then fixing it, right? It is actually an incredibly gentle recognition of how my foundational perspectives, my way of walking in the world, my approach to not only difficulty, but also like pleasure and bliss and excitement, all of that was built on foundations that were put in place largely before we had any awareness, right? And when we're kids, and I know this is not absolutely everybody, this is just looking at being human and how our uh, we'll call it the spiritual awareness, how our higher consciousness awareness comes through who we are as a child. Each of us comes in like looking to experience specific things, not to be like learning per se. To me, this world is not about the like the torture school or the punishment planet, as some people talk about it. It's more
I like that.
like like the perfect place to come to get to see the things that are going to help you wake up and stay awake to your own true nature, to actually let your heart come alive, right? So consciously or largely unconsciously, there's a foundation that gets built that we walk on as we grow through time and we become, whatever this is, our particular groups of patterns and responses and reactions and clarity and blindness.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about retrofitting the foundation, to me, that's like asking questions like, who am I really? And what do I actually enjoy? And can I have the courage to become aware of how my patterns were built? Not because they're bad or wrong, they're actually perfect because they got us this far, right? But because when I'm aware of my patterns, that's what opens the space for recalibrating and making new choices in familiar settings that might take me closer to my true heart in real time, real day, right?
It reminds me of when you go bowling and you're a kid and you get the bumper lanes, like we grow up with bumper lanes, and at some point we got to take the bumpers off.
Yeah.
It's still a lane, but so it's familiar in a sense, but it's a new way of navigating the lane.
That's exactly. Right. So then how do you know, right? How do you know if your foundation needs retrofitting, or like, how do you start? Where does that come from? Right. And the truth is it's going to happen whether we do it consciously or not. We can bumble through our lives and, bruise our foreheads banging off the same brick wall because some of us are stubborn, maybe other people. I've never been stubborn. Some people are stubborn. But we can be stubborn and bounce off the same issues, the same problems, the same hurts, the same confusions, the same difficulties, the same relationships, right? The same reactions. And we're still at some point in this life or the next going to fall into an awareness that, you know what, I could make a different choice here, right? So it's going to happen. Everybody's on their way home to the heart. But when we start getting curious about, you know what, I think I'd like to do this differently, or I know there's a different way. There are lots of questions that we had when we were children that really never got addressed. and maybe we're never asked. Like if we as 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, we're asking questions like, what is that?
Yeah.
And we're met with, oh, don't worry about that. Or it's just a bird. Or stop being so sensitive. You don't need to know about that. What happens is there's a feedback loop that we make decisions about ourselves. That's like, all right, what I'm curious about doesn't matter. That's a conclusion we can come to.
Mm-hmm.
Or don't ask too much. You can ask a little bit, but don't ask too much. And that's a decision that we make when we're very young, before we know how to truly explore what we're curious about, before we have vocabulary. And often we didn't have adults or guides to help us figure out exactly what we were asking, right? So, for example, if I point at a tree and I say, what's that? What I might be looking at is just this swirling movement of energy that has multiple colors, that seems to be reaching out to connect with me, that it makes this feeling happen in my body that turns my mouth up. And it, to me, because we're physical, I can point and I say, what is that? And what I'm asking about isn't necessarily the structure. What I'm asking about is this experience. If there's nobody around me to help me get clear what that is, like, for example, tell me what you see.
Mm-hmm.
How do you describe what you see? Let's describe it before we name it. Right? And
Mm-hmm.
inviting more expression. Many of us didn't have that. And so that truncation of the experience, squeezing the experience into a label, that label becomes a foundation, even when there's all this other stuff we just never got to explore.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of happens in every realm of life. So for me personally, I just kept asking the tree, what are you? Because I didn't have people that would help me in the ways that made sense. For whatever reason, I just kept exploring the energy part of it, the feel part of it, the relationship. So from that's part of my foundation, is the realness of what happens and what's there before it became a word. Right? So when we're talking about retrofitting the foundation, to me, it's getting curious about what people are actually curious about. That you can feel it, right? But maybe this is the first time when you've even like had a little bit of space to go, yeah, that's there. Yeah. So how do we honor, how do we get to the question, the curiosity? And then when the curiosity is there, not just feed it answers, but ask it for more. Like, how would you describe your own experience? And in the listening, then the person who's exploring themselves and their foundation, just in the listening, they can feel their own awareness filling in the cracks, and for the questions that were never asked or never heard and potentially never addressed.
And I think for some people that it arises as discomfort, right? That need to pull the bumper lane or the bumper lanes off. They know the pattern is there and there's discomfort with the pattern, but they don't know how to begin to explore the alternative because they haven't, like you said, there's been labels for everything as they grew up rather than have the experience. And I think it's almost its own language, but not in words.
Right. Yes. Which cracks me up because little kids, imaginary friends, or they'll make up their own language and they very quickly get told, no, don't speak like that, speak like this. And that was actually my experience as a kid. Kerri, nobody's ever going to understand you. You have to change the way you talk. my whole life. You have to change, you have to change, you have to change. And I tried all of that. And however much I changed, it kept bringing me back to really get like, no, I want that place where I feel like I can't fall. I want that
Mm,
place where there's no way to mess up. I want to live
yeah.
on that foundation, right? And it's unique. It's funny because it's like it's a unique journey for everybody because everybody's unique, but it's somehow the same. It can be addressed with real simplicity and compassion and kindness. And then everybody's uniqueness is set free to be expressed.
You know what the irony is that's really coming up for me that's really cool is that, okay, so you've been functioning on a certain pattern for so long, right? And then maybe there's discomfort. Oh, I've hit my head, 1,600 times. I don't want to hit my head anymore, but I don't know the alternative. And then I think that's where some folks, and I can speak for myself, start to try and articulate in words, wanting a feel for a retrofit of the foundation. But that's where the opportunity is because it doesn't matter if you can't articulate it. It doesn't need to be articulated.
I love that. You're so
That's so cool because it's like going back to being a kid.
totally. So then what has it been like for you then to maybe not articulate it, but know it?
Oh, it's a roller coaster, but I think that retrofitting is a roller coaster, right? Because the mind wants to fall back into that old pattern. So it's this sort of like a pinball machine, a little bit of a feel sometimes. But then when the mind wants to find words to articulate things, I say thank you.
Mm.
You're doing great. and then and then I try and sit with it because the feeling is what's so foreign to me. Or maybe it's not foreign's not the right word, but it hasn't been given its the stage it deserves, if you will.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people it's both unfamiliar and familiar.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah,
Yes.
because truly the feeling that we're talking about is yourself. It is that pure life force, right? That, and we could call it presence. We could call it uniqueness. We could call it that light, shine your light. It comes as a feeling, right? And I wanted to say something too about the discomfort and comfort. I have a dear friend, and we were talking, I think just yesterday, and she was saying, that her work has dropped away a little bit, and she works doing energetic healing work with horses. And she's saying, I'm just not myself when I'm not around the horses.
Mm.
And I said, well, you have horses in your backyard, over your fence in your backyard. And so I wonder what the difference is. And we talked through this a little bit, and what she ended up saying is like, it's really different when somebody calls and says, will you please come help with my horse? And then I go and I show up and everything turns on and all the healing work happens. And it's exquisite. This is my work in the world. And that's just not been happening for her. And I said, so what then is different about going out into this 20 acres behind your house and being with the horses that live in a herd out there? And she said something beautiful, like, yeah, I could do that, but it's just not quite the same
Hmm.
vavoom, the same, not payoff. She didn't say payoff, but it was something similar to that. And she was just like, yeah.
Hmm.
Mm. And so, I asked, then is it really the horses that you're missing being around, or is it something about the interaction also with the people? And she thought about that for a second, because she's a very sensitive person, and like many others, she'll say, I prefer the company of horses to the company of people. But it is the interaction with the people facilitated by the horses that actually has been lighting her up.
Mm.
And she pauses for a second, and we didn't really go so far as to offer the words that that she does have a level of comfort with humans. We didn't use the comfort word with humans, but we did point out how being out with horses is uncomfortable, just because she's looking for a certain kind of experience in herself, and that she's reluctant to go out and be with the horses just by herself because of that discomfort.
Hmm.
And when she realized that, and I teased her a little bit, and just teased her that I know she doesn't like being uncomfortable. She really likes her comfort zones. And she just like started laughing like crazy. And in that moment, she's like, she got playfully frustrated with me, like, Kerri, stop seeing the core element in this. And but she was, in that moment, it actually made it okay to be both comfortable and uncomfortable, simply for the opportunity to see what's there, right? And that's that opening for retrofitting your foundation. Just seeing that opening, your heart comes in and starts filling that space with that feeling of, oh, it's actually okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? It's okay to be uncomfortable and comfortable at the same time. Oh, you know what? It would be okay for things to be a little different, right? That's the experience of having a retrofitted foundation is more like that.
I think you said it the other day. We've talked about it a couple of times, to get curious about the discomfort. And it just makes the discomfort, that feeling, so much more playful.
Totally.
And then it almost brings a giggle out, because it's like, what am I going to learn here? and like you said, the heart comes out, and you almost get excited about it. Like, oh, what am I going to receive from this discomfort today?
Totally. I love it. Like,
Yeah.
when there's moments when there's no discomfort at all. Like the past couple weeks, I actually, my poor little thinker started to freak out a little bit because everything is great. Like, what do I do when everything is great? Everything is harmonious, and even looking in expanded ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be this and that could be this, but it's all just happening. It's all part of the entire dance. It's all part of a bigger harmony, and there is nothing to push toward or against. And
Mm-hmm.
it puts you straight into an awareness of what's happening right here, right now. This, call it the present
Mm-hmm.
moment. When the thinker starts to actually recognize this thing called the present moment,
Yeah.
it generates a feeling we could call presence. And then this guy's like, whoa, 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 I didn't want any feelings. I just wanted to get it right.
I was going
Right?
to solve all your problems for you in
That's
all of 2
exactly all you
minutes.
need is the present moment. I solved it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then the present moment starts to become you, and it changes your experience in a body on a planet.
Yeah.
And that's when it really helps. Retrofitting a foundation really is just helping the mind have a new relationship, a new way to relate to what we have learned, what we're interested in experiencing, and how and who and what we are as we breathe in each moment, right? So it's really helping the thinker have a different relationship with life. That's what retrofitting does. Retrofitting, giving it a buzzword. You could call it reclaiming all that you are through your conscious everyday awareness, by getting curious and being willing to experience more of who you are.
I love it.